Hey everybody out there, this is Ian Smith coming at you again regarding some of my insights as an engineer and surgeon about COVID-19. This is my idea for personal people to keep themselves out of the hospital and for systems and communities to potentially keep the hospitals from being overrun, particularly if the hospitals aren't set up properly with a pandemic style. So this is essentially a proposal for the system and for individuals to provide most of what would be needed to keep you out of the hospital in the setting of acute respiratory failure. This disease, COVID-19, is a single system organ failure. It is an acute respiratory failure, and we've had this game plan for a long time, although all of this stuff is prescription now. My thesis is that most people can weather the storm at home. That's 80% of people. I'm not going to cite anything that's pretty well accepted. Oxygen is essentially the only intervention that's needed for the hospitalized people that are just on the COVID-19 ward. Why do I know that? Well, there's a lot of hydrochloroquine discussions and things like that and Z-packs and everything, but none of that has been proven, so don't kid yourself. When you have acute respiratory failure and you're oxygen starved, all you want is oxygen. And a lot of these, that's 15% of people. If our hospitals get overwhelmed and they don't have spots for those people, if you don't have your own oxygen concentrator and the government hasn't set up and bought 800,000 million oxygen concentrators, we are going to have a severe problem. There's also concerns about the worldwide production of liquid oxygen and at what point would that threshold be crossed. The other piece of equipment that many have known is very helpful in acute respiratory failure is a CPAP machine, or even better, a BiPAP machine. I'm going to explain on the next slide what that is. That, in many situations, can help people avoid intubation in acute respiratory failure. That literature has been out there for 10 or 15 years, and it's very convincing literature. It is the protocol done at all modern American hospitals to keep you off the vent in this situation. In certain failed hospital systems, if the curve does not get flat enough and the curve gets chopped, as we're seeing in some of the communities with the big hotspots, I would recommend this type of equipment be deregulated and given to people. Let people borrow these things, borrow oxygen concentrators and borrow CPAPs, and then they can go to the next person when they recover. Our governments every city could order a ton of these. So the next question and thing I wanted to talk to you guys about is, what is a BiPAP? BiPAP is bi-level positive airway pressure. What happens in this disease with acute respiratory failure is your respiratory rate gets up to about 50 or 60, and you struggle to breathe using accessory muscles and you tire out. So the sooner you can get these people on oxygen so that they can keep their reserve, and the sooner as their respiratory rates go up, you can put them on BiPAP to give them a little assistance with their breathing, the more likely they are to not completely crump and just completely give out with their respiratory effort. And if you had them on BiPAP and you were able to take their pulse ox and see that their oxygenation was dropping and their respiratory rate was increasing, you could get them to the hospital, and they could be formally intubated or put onto ECMO, obviously. How are we going to help our system? We see an onslaught of cases. It's in Brooklyn and in New York and in Louisiana. They've already said they want to empower people to stay home. It helps save hospital supplies. One of the biggest downsides of BiPAP and why some communities are afraid of it is it spews virus. If somebody's at their house using this, it's no big deal. People already use CPAPs. You just put on the mask and plug it in. Isn't that hard? Allow people to borrow oxygen concentrators for their house, let people borrow BiPAPs, have videos explain to them how to do it. After 8 days or 10 days of usage, they could give it to the next person. This would allow us to scale our care. Final slide is just simply, how do I know this works? It already is the protocol. It's part of the protocol. If you go to a modern American hospital now, and you have a degree of acute respiratory failure, they're going to put you on oxygen. If you fail that, they're going to put you on BiPAP. If you fail that, they're going to intubate you. If you fail that, they're going to put you on ECMO. If you have a reversible acute respiratory failure. I cited an article there from McGill that talks about CPAP and BiPAP. BiPAP's better because it's more comfortable with during your exhalation. It keeps the pressure up, makes it easier for you to breathe. It's just like a forced respiration. And that's the rationale for BiPAP. I think our government should plan by getting as much oxygen concentrators and oxygen production as possible. Oxygen tanks, we need BiPAPs, CPAPs, every machine we can get brought to these hotspots. And again, I'm making a proposal that if people had access to it through either rentals, right now that's FDA regulated. You can't just walk into an oxygen store and buy oxygen, even though it's in the air. You can't walk into a respiratory or a medical equipment store and just buy BIPAP or CPAP. I think this should be completely deregulated and just empower people to do something and keep them out of the hospital. Again, it's particularly the oxygen concentrators. So this is kind of my proposal. Obviously, if communities can obtain this type of equipment and they want to put it in a stadium or a medical hospital unit, that's reasonable too. People could don and doff their equipment. It doesn't have to be at people's houses, but this is my way of trying to simplify the single system organ failure, acute respiratory failure. What do you really need, and what is really going to help in reality? Thanks, everyone.